There's a gap between what HR says and what HR does. Most people don't notice it at first.
The language sounds supportive. The policies look protective. The meetings feel collaborative. But over time, something doesn't add up. The outcomes don't match the messaging. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
HR exists to protect the company, not from lawsuits or bad press, from you. That sounds harsh, but it's just how the system works. And once you understand that, a lot of things start making sense. Things that felt personal suddenly look structural. Things that felt random suddenly look intentional.
Let's start with the basics. Human resources isn't a support department, it's a risk management department. Their job is to minimize liability, to keep the company functioning, to make sure nothing you do becomes a problem they have to solve in court.
That's not evil, it's just structural. The person across the desk might be kind, they might genuinely want to help, but the role itself has a different mission, and the role always wins.
Here's what that looks like in practice. You go to HR with a complaint. Maybe your manager is crossing lines. Maybe you're being harassed. Maybe the workload is unsustainable and people are burning out. HR listens. They nod. They take notes. They tell you they'll look into it. They might even seem concerned. And maybe they do look into it, but what they're really doing is assessing risk, not to you, to the organization. They're asking themselves a few questions. Is this person likely to sue? Is this going to become a public problem? Is there documentation that makes the company look bad? Can we contain this quietly? How much will it cost to make this go away?
And then they act accordingly. If you're the problem, they'll manage you out. If your manager is the problem but valuable, they'll move you. If it's murky, they'll do the minimum required and hope it goes away. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just how institutions behave when self-preservation is the priority.
There's a phrase you hear a lot in these conversations. We take this very seriously. That's true. They do take it seriously, just not in the way you think. They take it seriously as a threat to the organization, and their response is designed to neutralize that threat. Sometimes that means fixing the problem. Often it means managing the optics. Sometimes it means managing you. The distinction matters. Here's the part nobody warns you about. When you go to HR, you create a record, and that record follows you.
Even if you're right, even if you're the victim, even if the investigation clears you completely, you're now someone who escalated, someone who caused the disruption, someone who might do it again.
That label sticks. It doesn't matter if the complaint was justified. What matters is that you're now a known variable, and known variables get quietly sidelined. Not immediately, not obviously, but it happens.
People who don't make waves. People who absorb problems quietly. People who leave before they become expensive. The strange part is how this plays out over years. You watch people get promoted. Not always the best performers. Not always the most qualified.
Often the ones who know how to navigate, who understand the unspoken rules, who don't threaten the equilibrium. And you start to realize competence isn't enough. Understanding the game matters more than playing it well. Some people figure this out early. Most people figure it out too late. Let's talk about performance improvement plans, PIPs. If you're ever put on one, here's what's really happening. The company has already decided they're not trying to improve your performance. They're building a paper trail, so when they let you go, it's documented.
So you can't claim it was retaliation or discrimination, so they can show they gave you a chance. The PIP isn't a chance, it's a countdown.
Sometimes people do survive them, that's true. But usually it's because they were useful in a way that outweighed the risk, or because they had leverage the company couldn't ignore, or because the manager who initiated it left before it concluded.
For most people, the PIP is just a signal. Start looking. Don't wait for the inevitable. Now let's talk about salary. Your pay is not based on your value. It's based on what they think they can pay you.
That number is set by negotiation, leverage, and market conditions, not by fairness, not by contribution. If you didn't negotiate, you're probably underpaid. If you've been there a long time without switching jobs, you're definitely underpaid. The system rewards people who leave, not people who stay.
Raises work the same way. They're not about rewarding performance, they're about retention. If you're not a flight risk, you're not a priority. If you're loyal and reliable and quiet, you'll get the standard percentage, maybe 2%, maybe 3%.
The person who just joined will get more because they had leverage when it mattered, because they negotiated from the outside. This creates a strange dynamic. The people who care most about the work often get rewarded least, because caring makes you invested, and investment makes you less likely to leave.
So the company can afford to underpay you. It's not malicious, it's just efficient. And efficiency is what the system optimizes for, not loyalty, not fairness. When companies restructure, they'll tell you it's about efficiency, about staying competitive, about adapting to market changes, about positioning for the future.
Sometimes that's true, but often it's just about cutting costs, and the people who get cut aren't always the least productive. They're the most expensive, the longest tenure, the ones whose salaries have crept up over time, the ones who've been there long enough to accumulate raises. That's not personal, it's math.
And when budgets tighten, culture is the first thing that gets quietly set aside. The values don't change on paper, they just stop mattering in practice. This is the part that feels heavy, because you can do everything right. You can be good at your job.
You can be liked. You can show up early and stay late. You can follow the rules. You can believe in the mission, and it still might not matter because the rules are written for the institution, not for you.
The hardest part is watching people blame themselves. They think they weren't strategic enough. They think they should have seen it coming. They think if they just worked harder, or spoken up differently, or built better relationships, things would have gone another way.
But most of the time, the outcome was already determined by factors that had nothing to do with them, by decisions made in rooms they weren't in, by spreadsheets that reduced them to a line item. None of this is personal.
The person in HR isn't your enemy. Your manager probably isn't either. Most of them are just trying to do their jobs. They're just operating inside the same system you are, a system that prioritizes continuity and profit over individual fairness.
Understanding that doesn't make it better, but it makes it clearer, and clarity helps. Because once you see it, you stop waiting for protection that isn't coming. You stop being surprised when the promises don't hold. You stop feeling betrayed when the company acts like a company.
And that's okay. That's what HR will never tell you. Not because they're hiding it, but because the system doesn't benefit from you knowing. It benefits from you hoping, from you believing, from you staying invested in the narrative. The narrative that hard work gets rewarded, that loyalty counts for something, that your contribution will be recognized when it matters. It benefits from you staying just long enough to be useful, to train your replacement, to finish the project, to get through the busy season, and then moving on before you become expensive. Before you accumulate too much institutional knowledge, before your salary becomes a problem to solve, before you're tenured enough to expect more than the system wants to give. The timing isn't accidental. It's designed not by any one person, but by the logic of the system itself.